Well, people are always asking me about mainframe modernization, and well, let me think about this. Always, is that true? Yeah, it very frequently comes up. I think especially like I was realizing in this past year. I don't know if you've experienced this, but in this past year, people I talk with for years have always been talking about like moving to the cloud and modernizing their stuff, and they really wanted to do it. But I've noticed in the past year, people actually have numbers around it, like goals and KPIs they're supposed to reach, which seems like it's happening more and more. So you wrote a blog post. This is actually last year from May of 2022 when I was looking over. I don't even remember what I was reading about legacy applications, and I came across this on our blog. And you had a pretty what I think is a great in the sense that it's brief and just deep enough to make sense. Like overview of I'm sure along with many people, like you worked on helping modernize a mainframe application. And it was a good overview of a lot of the practices I've heard we do in Swift and things like that with some nice diagrams. So I thought it'd be fun to talk to you about that. Why don't you introduce yourself first?
So I am Fouad, and I am working in Tanzu R&D today, and since a few months ago. And before that, I was working in Tanzu Labs in France, in Paris, and I was involved in many engagements where we used to modernize legacy applications, and mainframes are uh, some of the kinds of application that we are used to modernize there.
Do you see a lot of this out there, like mainframe applications that people want to and then actually are modernizing, or does it happen rarely?
So personally, it started like I think I was involved in that kind of engagement like in 2019, like already
Mm,
3 or 4 years ago, and at that time there was not really many mainframe engagements going on. But since a couple of years, I, I've seen in labs that there are more and more customers asking to dig into that and to help them modernizing the mainframe.
so give us an overview of like both the example, as you say, engagement here, but like I think it's pretty representative of what you see. Let's call it the business motivations for modernizing a mainframe. You actually cover it pretty well right from the beginning. Like it's a 30-year-old system with 12,000 programs that's relied on by 3 million users. You get into like what the business motivations for doing it are. And I think going over this is always very important because like for as much as mainframe people used to call us distributed people, might sort of poke fun at mainframes and have them be old. Like the thing about a mainframe that's been running 30 years is it works, right? And it's worked very well for 30 years to survive through all of that.
When companies have mainframes, they usually work fine. But for this example, one of the main issues that the customer had was that they the lack of knowledge to maintain and to make use
All
of
right.
the mainframe. So that was one of the key cornerstone, basically, that they wanted to get rid of, to be able to have people who developers, new teams that who could handle the business that is implemented in the mainframe, but using modern technologies. So that was one of the aspects, and the second big one was to reduce infrastructure costs, basically, because having a mainframe processors running cost them millions of euros, and being able just to move some transactions that were running into the mainframe into new application would make them save a lot of money.
Mm,
So they wanted to start to do that. The goal was not to get rid of the whole mainframe like as fast as possible. It was more like to start
right.
extract a few things step by step, and being able to do like to have quick wins and a quick money savings by just doing that.
I wrote this little booklet last year with our colleague Mark Zotner
Mm.
about about the Swift method and like more broadly like we called it the legacy trap. That was our clever name for it. But more broadly, like from a for lack of a better phrase, a business perspective, like what the deal with modernization is. In doing it, like we went over like what makes software legacy software, and I mean, I think you hit on one of the to kind of summarize the two of them, like with mainframes especially, there's the like you've forgotten about it. Like you lack knowledge about how to do it. And I think how that manifests itself in, like, something that the organization cares about is that you can no longer really change or add to the functionality of it. Or and sometimes it's also performance, right? Like, if you've forgotten how a system works, sometimes when you have different performance needs, like you have to serve a whole bunch of different people, or you have to do it in a different medium, like you have to go from a desktop app to like a mobile app or something, like it's kind of no longer fit. But I think I would imagine the one that people encounter a lot more is like you just have different features that you wanna add, and it's kind of not possible, right?
Yes.
And because no one really remembers not only, like, in this case, like, how to program in COBOL, and also not only just, like, how the programming works, but, like, one that's especially, like, terrible is, like, no one remembers how to test it to
Yes.
to make sure it doesn't break things, which is terrible. It's
Yeah, that's
no good.
true. They also have to rely on external companies to maintain
Mm,
this knowledge, and that's also a big danger for such companies. Like they move the business knowledge, they externalize the business knowledge, that knowledge to external companies. They don't have much more control about on it, rather than in the past they were able to control their business inside the company. So that was also an issue
mm.
for this company. And also another thing that another issue that they have is the development lifecycle, like you mentioned, the capability to deploy new features or to fix existing features uh, also takes a lot of time. Uh,
Mm.
just to deploy new things, it's a they had heavy processes. They had to set up downtime periods, like to stop the users using the application to be able to deploy your simple feature. That was very painful for them.
Their tech debt finally caught up with them. So you mentioned one thing I'm interested in hearing more about, which is, and this is part of like the method that, Tanzu Labs and Pivotal Labs people have developed, not only in legacy modernization, but just in apps and platform engineering, like in general, which is like starting small, basically, is the way I think of it, right? Instead of, "Oh, we're gonna modernize and move everything on the mainframe." Like, more so, it sounds how y'all started was like, "Let's start with one thing. Let's start by just" to use a word that's common, like, little slices and slicing away at it. Was, like, the customer comfortable with that? Often, there's just like, "Well, why wouldn't we do everything at once?" But I think there's also often, like, an overly ambitious business case they have to deliver on. Like, if we're gonna take on all this risk and, like, spend some money on this, we need to have a big payoff at the end of the year. Whereas when we go again with this start small and slice thing, we're kind of like saying, "Yeah, there's not gonna be a big payoff for, like, 3 to 12 months." Did you encounter in this case where you kind of had to sell people on starting small and slices? What was that like?
Yeah, that's usually hard to convince people, companies about that, customers about this. But in that case, for example, they already tried it in the past, so they already tried
Alright.
to rewrite, and they felt the pain to do so, and that they were not happy with the result. So that's why they wanted, like, to experiment our approach. And actually, before working on the mainframe, we had past engagements with them where they trusted us. Yeah, basically, we built a trust relationship with them, and that's why they involve us in try helping them modernizing their mainframe. And it was a kind of some kind of challenge, right? Like, okay, prove us that you can use your practices to start
Mm.
modernize something in the mainframe, and see and check if it's better than what we did in the past, or is it worse, or
Oh, yeah.
and then to kind of build some comparison charts between our approach.
I guess this is what, like, labs thinking would say is like, well, let's do a small project or a slice to see if we can also do this with mainframe stuff, right? Let's
Yes.
prove that we can do this out in kind of like it's not risk free, but a lower risk way. When you're looking at the application, like how do you start with that? Like how do you start like comprehending what this application is, kind of like figuring out what little slice to do? Kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, sure. So basically, we use one of the tools in our Swift methodology box, that is called event storming, basically.
Mm.
And what we do is we run a workshop with um, every everybody, all the people that are who are involved in the mainframe, who have knowledge on the mainframes, and that can uh, imply having people that are at a high level of the hierarchy of the company, who often were developers in the company and know about the mainframes, but now they've changed their position. They're no more developers, and like they've been
Yeah.
promoted, but they have knowledge of this. So we have to involve those people in our this workshop until the develop and also the developers and the testers. So we have to gather everybody uh, in the same room and basically build a visual representation of all the events that are flowing through the system. Like basically, like
Hmm.
everyone bringing his or her piece of knowledge regarding how the things work in the system in the mainframe, and we have to merge all of this. So it's a sticky notes exercise. Basically, we have gathered in a piece in a room, and we put stickies, and people put stickies, and then we have to merge all of this to make sense of all the flows that we have in the system,
Hmm.
and from there we start to draw boundaries, like identify subdomains, like the like okay, this makes sense to gather those events together and to call that I don't know, like the accountability subdomain, and together
Mm.
and build that kind of um, identify that kind of subdomains, and and from there we can also have an exercise where we with the where the people in the room can set the value of each of these domain to identify
Right,
which
right.
one
Sort of like the
the
business value. Like, how
the
much does
business
this
values.
matter? Yeah.
Exactly.
How
And
important is it?
exactly. And also try to identify the pain points where they have the most the pain points. Maybe we would like to start there or not, depending on the context, because uh, depending on where you are in your mainframe modernization journey, maybe you want to start with something that is small, not too hard to implement, to validate the process that you are going to implement, but that
Right.
has some business rules. So the selection itself depends, I would say, depends on the context, but the tools uh, that we are using are basically the same. Put some values on the thing, identify the complexity, identify the business value, and try to and prioritize based on the context where you are working. What are you looking?
Mm.
What is your goal with your modernization? And then
Right.
select the appropriate, let's say, context or subdomain context, and then from there identify user journeys and slices that we could start with.
And so that gives you a list of just as you're saying, like, here are technically feasible and important enough, like, components we could work on modernizing. Because again, that as you're saying, the goal is to let's find something we can modernize that takes, I mean, I think the standard is like 12 weeks or whatever, but that takes a small amount of time,
Yes.
so that we can, just to summarize again, that we can figure out if we can do this.
Yes.
Right? And at the same time, actually do some of it, and also, like, learn how it's done. I'm interested to, like, test out some of my theories, with you about that. Is I feel like that exercise that you went over, the kind of, like, the event storming, doing, like, the finding the domains, all of that workshopping stuff, like, well, I mean, there's not an assumption, but the kind of the unstated thing in doing that exercise is that it doesn't that system view doesn't exist. Right? Like, that
Yeah.
while each of those individuals might, like, have their own view of what their part of the system does, that very often, especially with, like, in this case, like a 30-year-old application, um, no one really knows the whole, let alone
Yes.
everyone knowing the whole, and, like, what the handoffs are between them. So I imagine that's a huge part of it. It's just like, as Mark
Yes.
will call it, it's like architectural, archaeology, like
Yes.
like
Yes.
discovering the system.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a huge outcome of this workshop indeed. Like having this view that probably nobody's at the beginning of the workshop had in mind, and align also all the stakeholders on this knowledge. So of course the what we get at the end is not exhaustive. Like we of
Sure.
course we cannot go delve, we don't go deep, very deep in the details of every domain, but at least big picture. Everyone has a view of the big picture, and that is that is very, I'd say people when they after this workshop, they felt like, "Wow, I understand what I'm working on now." Like,
Yeah.
"Wow, I didn't imagine that there was so much complexity in this part." Oh, like, there are many, that cannot we had a lot of feedback like this, like, after this workshop.
It must feel nice on both sides to actually, like I mean, in our trade, learning is always fun. And so,
Yeah.
like, to have helped, the group as a whole to, like, have learned some new things, especially about something you're so close to, like your own systems, right? And, the other thing that, like, I think and, in general, this methodology I shouldn't say seen because I just record things and make slides. But, like, I've heard secondhand from labs people that whether it's new applications or existing ones, right? Like, I think the other thing that's valuable about it and to your point of not to your point, but, like, the positive side of it not being too detailed is that that's by design because the purpose is also to capture, like, again, to use the phrase, like, the business flow of it, like, the purpose of this application, right? Which is often, like, not fully reflected in all the technical systems, like, and I think by doing that event storming where there's, like, one event that you trace through the entire system, like, I don't know, just to pick something like, uh, authorizing that something happens, whether you're authorizing a prescription or authorizing, like, some forms being filled out, like, that whole authorization thing is an event that goes through the whole system. And, like, I always joke that, like, most people know the boxes, but it's those arrows that people lose out on. Like, the connection between the 2 of them is, like, where a lot of lost, knowledge, typically is. Okay, so you get the slices in front of you, and so, like, what slice do y'all pick? Like, what do you start with as you document it in the blog post?
In this example, we started by using like by working on a slice, a simple slice, basically to to be able to build something very fast and
Mm,
see if we could deploy it in production very quick and evaluate and identify all the trouble that we could have as fast as quick as possible instead of waiting to build something much more ready for for the users. The goal so basically we use the read transaction read actually even before that, sorry, even before that, what we did is we wanted to start experimenting on what we call strangling the
sure.
mainframe legacy system
Uh-huh.
to be sure that so the strangling an application is one pattern where we try to basically to capture the calls, like the requests that are done to the legacy system. We try to capture them in our new system that we want to build to see if we can if we could then rewrite them, like modernize them in our new
Right.
system. And so basically, it's kind of adding a proxy, a gateway between
Yeah.
the legacy system and our system. Uh, so we had to start with that because there were a lot of uncertainty about the architecture at our customers. Because our so if you look into the article, there was this schema where we have like a front end system and then the back end system and then the bus that redirects the calls from the back end to the mainframe. And
Mm.
we want I don't know if you remember that part. And we
Oh, yeah.
wanted to basically to integrate a proxy gateway between the bus system and the mainframe. Basically, like we wanted to see if we could capture the calls from the bus to our gateway and then redirect the calls coming to our gateway to the bus again that we call the mainframe. Just basically to see if we could capture things there. And
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like yeah, I guess you could call it a person in the middle, right? Like,
exactly,
you just add
exactly,
a layer there, and then at that point well, I guess one, like, you experiment with, like, we can actually connect to a mainframe and just be a pipe, right? Like
exactly,
and just getting to that point with authorization and figuring out how to do that, like and making sure you have the right character and coding and all that stuff is probably plenty of work,
yeah.
basically to do, quote, unquote, "nothing."
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. And it is very important also to it was very important to do it first because we realized that it failed basically. We
Mm.
were not able we were able to build the gateway and to think, but the thing is that the bus configuration was maintained by another team.
Alright.
Yeah, who didn't have the bandwidth to work with us basically to configure things to redirect to other way because um, if they had to do that, we will have to write like specification, and it would take 6 months to implement this, just to reconfigure the bus. So that was a a very important experimentation to have to validate that, to be sure that we could not do that. So and it forced us to pivot and to find another way to strangle the mainframe. And basically, I think I explained it in the article. Basically, there was a LDAP in this architecture
Yeah.
that is used to by the backend to know where to know the routes that can to call on the bus when they want to call a mainframe transaction. So we changed these routes to
Yeah.
redirect them basically to a new to our system, let's say, to simplify
Yeah,
things.
it was fortunate that that bus
Yeah.
was in place, right? Like, that
Yes.
was kind of already a, sort of already, as you're saying, a proxy or a gateway or whatever that you could have it.
So we were lucky. That's why the context where you are modernizing the application is very important, because
Yeah.
something that works in one context might not work in another one. And yeah, we don't try to come with at labs, at least we don't try to come with already keyed solutions like, okay, we're going to do in your context and study the problems that we're going to meet to face by doing the things, rather than just diagramming things.
So you start off, so basically, you're fortunate that there's a, like, call it an enterprise bus, but a bus in place that's
Yeah.
already, like, and was that like WebSphere connected to the mainframe, or, like, what was the bus? I
So
forget.
I think the bus was Oracle ESB, and yeah, the front end and back end stuff were deployed on WebLogic, if I remember.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Good old J2EE stuff back when there was a 2 in
Yeah.
it. And so essentially, you put that gateway in there, we'll call it,
Yeah.
that is, again, putting it kind of sarcastically, does nothing. Like, all it is to make sure that you can have this pass through. And then I imagine, the goal of that is that as you have new applications, or applications that wanna talk with the mainframe, or existing ones, you just shift them over to using that gateway, right? And and
Exactly.
and which should more or less be the same. So what's, like, the next step after that? You get the gateway in place, and then how do you do further slicing?
So the next step, sorry, was um, to to work on one of the business transaction that was um, responsible of reading information from the mainframe databases, from
Mm, right.
DB2 and DL1 databases. And so basically, we started to write a new microservice. Let's say, let's call it like this. This is a fancy word that contained uh, an endpoint to read basically information from the legacy database. And if I try to describe the flow, so the front end will call the back end that will call our gateway, and our gateway will call our uh,
Yep.
new endpoints and return the result to the front end. Instead of calling the mainframe, we get
Oh,
the call to our application, new application.
the other thing that I think is worth pointing out, or I mean, you said it, but calling out even more, is that it was just a read-only operation. So it's like,
Yes.
again, minimal risk, right?
So
Like
minimal
like
risk, exactly.
like most risk comes from writing or changing the data versus just, like,
Yeah.
seeing what it is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, yeah. And it also helped to build confidence within the team, like
Right.
because we didn't have much knowledge on mainframe stuff, and also to have learnings. Because, for example, uh, they were using DB2 as a database, but they were also using another database that is called DL1, which is quite
Mhm.
old, and that that is a hierarchical database, not a relational database, and that uh, there was no tool to access the database for modern applications, like to be able to read uh,
Okay.
directly in this kind of database. Actually, it's not really true. There was one tool, but not open sourced, like, and there was a team who were studying the ability of this tool to be used in modern application to read in this legacy
Right.
database. So that allowed us to learn things like that. Even a simple slice like this was very beneficial for the team.
So then, eventually, you wanna actually, like, change the data and write to it. So what how do y'all get to that?
So uh, So this was the moment where we introduce this is the moment where we introduce a new database for our new application to give it the responsibility to be the owner of its own data, let's say. And basically it start the same way than the read slice. Like we we configure the LDAP to route ladder to route to a new endpoint that is responsible to write
Yeah.
data in the database. And what we did first is to set up this new database and to basically to trigger to to parallelize the function let's say the functionality. I mean by that, like we are saving the data in the new system, but we are also saving the data in the old system. We are also calling the transaction that we are rewriting in the old system. So it's a parallel write, like we are writing in both in the old and the new system. Um, why we did that is because we wanted to because there are a lot of data that have to be written, let's say, a lot of business rules in the old system that are used to write data, and we
Hmm.
wanted to implement those business rules incrementally because they are this is the way we usually work. We don't want to do a big bang rewriting, and so basically the source of truth remains the old database while we incrementally implement the business rules to write data in the new
Right.
database.
Going back to the beginning, you've got 30 years of business rules,
Yes,
and you know, who knows what they are really.
yes, yes. Yeah, we find surprises. We have surprises when when we dig into those, yeah, things that are not used, things that nobody knows what they are for, and that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then essentially with like that comparator pattern, you have, I mean, well, you are like testing in production, which is always a scary
exactly.
phrase to use with people. But like you're making, you know, as long as you're really good at accounting for this, as you implement those new business rules, like in your new database, you actually can track if your assumptions about them are correct by like what the comparison looks like. And then also I would imagine you also, I mean, it's annoying to have 2 copies of the same data, like, eventually, I imagine you have to consolidate them, but then also
Yeah.
ongoing, uh, other systems that are using that data that have not been modernized, they can go on functioning, right? Like,
Yes.
they can use that old data, which again, it fits into this notion of, like, let's do the smallest amount possible without
Yes.
having to mess with the rest of the system.
You are right. You're right. Totally. Um, so yeah, this comparator that we built to validate that what we are writing in the new system is the same as the same meaning that what we are writing than what we are writing in the old system. Uh, Also helps build a lot of confidence um, in the team, but also in the whole company because it's a very sensitive subject to touch to modernize mainframes there because we are touching 30 years of like you said, business rules and
Yeah,
things might break and having this comparator mechanism, even if it complexify a bit the architecture, helps to build that confidence in the company that we are not doing, we are not introducing too many. I don't want to say no bug because they can bugs can happen anytime, but
it's just
getting
the risk of things
yeah, we are
going poor.
diminishing the risk exactly.
Yeah,
Like you said, after this step, when this confidence is built, the next step will be like to swap the source of truth for the data, like
yeah,
to give the source of truth to the new application, and then to synchronize the old system database with the new one to make the other application that use the same data still
yeah.
work. And that will be the next step after building that confidence path.
How long do you think that takes? Like, do you think that's like 3 months, or is it like 2 years? That you kinda just, like, let those 2 databases kind of, like, simmer and merge together?
Yeah, I think it take months and years. For this example, it took 2 years for them to rewrite
Okay.
the transactions, like and to have this confidence and to be able to move thing to change the source of truth. So
Yeah.
it depends on the complexity of the transaction and the uh, yeah, it can. I will not evaluate that in weeks.
That's really interesting to me because I haven't thought about, like, this kind of scenario, but in general, the other thing, like, when I talk with larger organizations about modernizing or doing anything is one of the other first things in addition to starting small that I try to emphasize is, like, however long you think this is gonna take, you should probably double it. And it's not just the usual, like, programmers can't estimate and it takes a long time, but it's more of I think a lot of the best practices and knowledge we have about programming comes from organizations that are building new applications, or at least very young applications, right? Like, and especially, like, consumer applications, all the social media applications and things like that. Versus, like, one of the things that's different at a large, older organization is, like you're saying, or we're saying, is they have a 30-year-old application, and just migrating all those business rules is gonna take a long time. And so you have to have this realistic expectation of, like, yeah, it's gonna take, like, 2 years, and that's not bad, it's fine. And in fact, it's good to be slow and steady and careful when you're doing this because it's important, right? Like, it's not like, I don't know, I'm just making something up. If you're doing, like, a photo management app, like, it is a bummer if you lose someone's photos, but it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of the thing, where, like, for these kind of applications across, like, banks and governments and other things like that, like, it is a big deal if you, like, mess up the business rules. Like, it causes, like, the scale of problems it can cause is much more than, like, "Eh, we lost photos from when my kid was 6," which is a big bummer for me personally, but it doesn't, like, bring down the banking system.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That was indeed the case. That was working on that kind of modernization is always sensitive. I would say, like, compared to more classical legacy system,
Right,
because we are touching the core of the company. But yeah, like, for example, for the concerning this example, like, it was very important to do it because they outsourced a lot of things, and
right.
they were not controlling this core anymore now. But that it's a long journey.
So then finally, so, like, well, as I always joke, it worked, otherwise you probably wouldn't have written it up. Like, kind of what were the results, the outcomes at the end?
A big outcome, but that is not really technical, is more like the trust. Like,
Ah, yeah.
people were not sure that it will work. Often we are used to try to anticipate a lot of things
Uh-huh.
beforehand, and that can feel very scary to try to discover things uh, little by little and solve problems as soon when they arrive, rather than trying to solve problems that maybe we will not have, and maybe that, yeah, that. So building this trust, um, giving confidence that our approach can help them modernizing their mainframes was one of the big outcomes for this engagement. Another one was like, also, but we also have in other engagements, not specific to mainframes, but the capability to deploy new features very fast, like building a pipeline, and being able to deploy new features without downtime, and stuff like that. That was a key learning for them. Of course, our practices, like, being able to pair, to do TDDs, and having a lean approach to how the way they are working was also very, very key. To come back to the pipeline, to give some numbers that I have in mind, I think, before, like I said, that it was taking weekends to deploy new features.
Mm.
Now it just take 30 minutes, like, to deploy a new feature. So that's a big, huge. Yeah, that's basically the big outcomes that we had.
I don't really know what socio-technical systems means. I should learn that phrase one day. I think as with all academic things, it's probably too precise for me to use correctly and fully know. One of the things that, you've gone over several times is, like, when you're looking at modernizing something like this, you have to not only think about the application or even, like, the hardware system or whatever involved, but you've gotta, like, treat the whole organization as the application, right? The way
Yes.
that people work together, the knowledge that they have, and then also, like, it's easy to say and maybe a little weird to think of, but, like, your trust and confidence in the process is part of it as well, right? Like, it's almost like a form of QA or quality that, like, you have to maintain confidence in it and instill that before people can execute.
You're right. And yeah, regarding also you mentioned it, indirectly the Conway's law, like, about the
Right.
organization. communication structures. Yeah, that was also something that we bring, like building these teams that who has the capability to take decisions regarding where they want to go to implement the things. That was also something very a bit new for the team because it's hard. It can be hard when you are said you are responsible of the decision you are going to take as a team. It's not someone else who will explain to you what you have to do anymore. And building that kind of mindset also is part
Mm.
of the engagement and was is very important to to instill to im- to adopt another culture, let's say,
Yeah.
in such companies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, that was fun talking through that, and I think I'll definitely put a link to the blog overview to the blog, which I think like it'll definitely it has a lot of visuals about each step that y'all went through, and I think it'll help people flesh out the details there. Do you have any like any websites or places you would send people if they're interested in following you, seeing what else you're up to,
Yeah, there is
whatever?
my blog. I didn't update it since a little bit, but I'm going to do that soon.
Yeah.
So my blog, fouadhamdi.com, basically, but it's in French. I might try to post some English articles as well.
Well, good. Well, I'll put a link to that as well. And yeah, it was fun talking with you about this. As always, this has been Tanzu Talk. If you're listening to the podcast version of this and you want to get the show notes, you can go to tanzutalk.com and find them. And hopefully, if you've listened this far and you don't subscribe to the podcast, you should definitely subscribe for interviews and news in the space and things like that. And you can also find out how to watch the videos of interviews that we do for things like this if you go to tanzutalk.com/videos. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye bye.